All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good middle of the night, wherever you are in the world. It is nice to be here with you guys today. My name is Maria, and today we're going to do something that's a little bit different. A lot of the time when we're talking about the MBA admissions process, our focus is understandably enough on the admissions piece of it, right? What should you do to maximize your chances of getting accepted, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in today's session, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about once you get to business school, what are some things I think you can do to maximize your experience? And I think that there are some pieces of this that are still pretty relevant, even if you haven't yet applied or if you're in the middle of applying. I think there are still some good things to keep in mind anyway. So hopefully this will be of interest or of use for a lot of you. I'm going to share my slides. Sorry, things are jumping up. Where are my boxes? And all right. So how can you make the most of your experience? You've worked so hard to get into business school. It's been such a long journey to get there. But then once you're there, it would really stink if you went to all that trouble only to have a suboptimal time there. So that's what we are going to talk about today. Who am I? Again, I'm Maria. In case you don't know me, I'm a Harvard Business School grad. I graduated in 2005, and I'm the founder of ApplicantLab.com, which is an online platform that walks you through step-by-step everything you need to do to build your strongest application possible. If you're sort of new to the admissions process, you might have seen that admissions consultants of my caliber at least charge $365, $480, or even $500 per hour. I think that's nice for them, but I also think it's a little bit ridiculous. You don't have to pay that much. You can get all that same advice from me through my online platform. It's $350 for unlimited schools, and people at GMAT Club really seem to love it. So with that out of the way, it is time to look ahead to your MBA experience. And so here's my summary of what we're going to cover today. I think some of the biggest mistakes that people make is number one, they don't make the most of their time at business school. Though that year or those 2 years are going to go by so quickly. And I know it's cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's a cliche for a reason because it's very, very true, right? So don't try to make the wrong career choices or not preparing sufficiently for the career path, not valuing that sort of last gasp of freedom, which I am calling it that. That might be a little too dramatic, but hey. Focusing too much on taking electives in your short-term areas of interest. I also think that another huge mistake that people make is they don't make enough of their relationships. Your number one priority in business school should not be grades. It should be meeting other students, other people in general, but other students in particular, and also professors and other types of VIPs. And then I think the final mistake that people tend to make is being a cheapskate. So now let us dig in to what I mean by each of those. So when you think about going to an MBA program, I work with a lot of people and we craft a strong career vision for getting into business school, right? And a lot of people, when I say to them, well, what do you actually want to do? Some people say, oh, well, once I get in, I'm going to pursue investment banking, or once I get in, I'm going to pursue something different. But some people say, look, honestly, I'm not really sure. And that's part of what I'm looking for in the business school experience, to give me a chance to just, sort of meditate on who I really am. And I don't know, maybe I'll do real estate or luxury goods marketing or social enterprise or bank, right? Like maybe I'll just explore all of these things with all. No. You are not going to have that much time. Yes, of course you'll have time to do some exploration, but you're not going to be able to explore every single career path that is out there. You have to come into school with a pretty good idea, at least narrow it down to 2, maybe 3 paths that you think you want to take. And if that involves doing that research now, before you even enroll, trust me, that is time well spent. Because I think a lot of people don't realize that recruiting for jobs, especially for some summer internships, and especially those large companies that have very structured MBA feeder programs, recruiting for those jobs starts really early. Like sometimes in some cases, 4 weeks, 6 weeks after the start of the school year. I think another thing people, on top of being shocked with how early it starts, like you're not going to have a ton of time to prepare. You can sometimes try to recruit for 2 different things at once. So like banking and consulting, though both of those firms might come to campus in the same week. So if you want to try to, if you're not really sure what you're going to do and you try to apply for both of those jobs, both of those interviews require very different types of preparation because they're kind of very different jobs. And so when somebody is like, oh, I can't decide between banking or consulting, so let me just recruit for both of them. The danger is that then your preparation is going to be so half-baked that you're just going to flunk both of the industry's interviews and you're not going to be anywhere. So having at least, if you're going into one of the traditional MBA career areas, at least go in with some, because you know, the recruiting happens at the same time. So you're going to have to choose one or the other probably. So you can't do it all. And in terms of preparing for those interviews, there are sort of two buckets of employers. Many fields, if not most fields, that are recruiters that come to campus are looking for some sort of relevant previous experience, whether that's in the industry, preferably in that industry, or perhaps in that function. So for example, if you currently work in the self-driving car, like if you want to recruit for the self-driving car industry, it would be best if you had already worked at a self-driving car company before business school. And if that's not the case, then it would have been best if you at least worked for a consumer-facing tech company. And if that's not the case, do you see what I'm saying? So at least, like, maybe you didn't work in self-driving cars, but at least you have got something in your background that will make you a strong contributor from day one. Or it could also be the function, right? If you currently work in marketing in some sort of industry and you want to work in marketing in a different industry, that's fine. That's usually not a super hard transition to make, because at least, again, you can hit the ground running on day one of that job. The employer doesn't have to worry that, oh my God, are we going to have to spend 6 weeks out of the 8-week internship training this person, right? They don't want to do that. They're coming to you to get talent that is going to help them for the summer. They are going to pay you X amount of money for the summer, and they want you to contribute 2x, 3x, whatever of value to make it worth their time. So for that reason, a lot of times people think, you know, I hear this a lot where people say, oh, well, I want to work in private equity after business school. And the problem with trying to say that is that if you haven't already worked in private equity, it's really hard to get a job in private equity. Or if you haven't worked in investment banking, preferably on a side of investment banking that has something to do with private equity. So, you know, it's a lot easier if you've worked on, you know, mergers and acquisitions versus if you were a trader of some sort, right? Because the skill set, again, is that much more applicable. So if your whole point in going to business school is, I want to get a job, you know, I'm currently an electrical engineer and I want to get a job in private equity immediately after business school, probably not going to happen. So make sure that you research really carefully what it is you want to do. What you could do, for example, and I'm just sticking with private equity as one example, but the same applies to many fields. If you want to work in private equity eventually, you would have to first do a stint in investment banking. Now, the good news is that two of the biggest recruiters, as I mentioned a second ago, being banking and consulting, a lot of them are a lot more lenient in terms of people having, you know, being an open book and sort of showing up and being like, hey, I used to be a 5th grade teacher before business school. I was an electrical engineer before business school. I was a petroleum drilling engineer before business school. Those fields, banking and consulting, are much more open to people from different, you know, your background does not matter nearly as much for that recruiting process. However, you cannot just rest on your laurels and breathe easy. You actually have to prepare for those very specialized interviews, right? It's not just that you show up and you shake the person's hand and you're like, yeah, I'm really interested in banking. And they're like, well, why? And you're like, because money is cool. I'm like, no, you have to be super prepared. Consulting, if you're not familiar with this, there are these famous sort of case interviews where they give you some data and put you on the spot and have you work through the logic of the problem. So my point is, you're going to have to either already have some sort of experience in what you're doing. And if you don't have experience, I skipped over this bullet point, but at least you have to start reading journals right now. You need to start, let's say you want to transition to something like real estate. Start reading every realestatenews.com magazine website you can get your hands on. So at least that way, if you do manage to snag one of those interviews, at least that way you can say, look, I've never done real estate before, but I'm a huge fanatic of it. I've been following it for years, blah, 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 interest rates and REITs and development stuff. I don't work in real estate, so I'm making up words right now. Right? But so at least that way you can have a fighting chance, because you can at least speak intelligently and show them that you're not going to be a burden to them when they bring you on board. And I want you to, no matter what, start networking now. At a bare minimum, and you're like, I haven't even gotten to campus yet. I don't care. Even if you're applying, by the way, this totally applies to you as well. Start reaching out to the clubs on campus that deal with whatever that professional path is that you want to take, because they are going to tell you the best ways to prep, right? Because especially the consulting and the banking clubs, right? They've been to this rodeo before. Most of the schools actually, for example, I know the consulting club will have its own, case, how to crack a case workbook or things like that. So they're going to tell you either what to do to prepare, or in some cases, let's say you reach out to the private equity club and you say, look, I'm currently an electrical engineer, and how, they might say to you like, look, it's probably not going to happen directly out of business school, but there was actually someone in the class 2 years ago who had a similar background, and then that person went to do banking, and then after she did 3 or 4 years of investment bank, then she was able to move to private equity, right? So that reaching out to those student clubs now, because those are the people who are going to be like, they literally just went through the recruiting process. So they are going to have the most up-to-date, most accurate information. Reach out to those guys now and start learning about what you need to do to prepare. And finally, if you are trying to make a pretty big switch with your MBA, I would advise you to really strongly consider trying to get a pre-MBA internship. This has started to become more and more popular. And you're like, what? But one of the whole points of going to business school is to get the summer internship. Yeah, the thing is, though, you can't get the summer internship during business school if sometimes you can't get it if you don't have previous experience. So what people are doing increasingly is they're getting pre-MBA internships, so that way they can speak intelligently in the interview and get the job. Even if that internship is unpaid, I would advise that you try to do at least a month, right? Because, a lot of people are happy to get free help, right? So even if you have to reach out to someone in the self-driving car industry and say, look, blah, 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 here's who I am, looking to learn more about your industry, what can I do for you, right? Maybe it's not full time, maybe it's 10 hours a week, but try to start to do anything at all to put that experience on your resume and to learn more. So again, you don't embarrass yourself in the job interview. And also, if this applies to you, if you are looking at another country for your MBA, start thinking about employment visas as soon as possible. I don't just mean the visa that you need to be a student to go study. I mean, asking yourself, okay, which companies are the most likely to sponsor employment visas or to lead to getting whatever, the H-1B or whatever the equivalence is in other countries. I'll tell you, if you are a foreign national and you come to the US and you want to work for a startup right after business school, that's great. You might get between 1 to 3 years, depending upon whether or not the program is STEM designated. But realize that startup probably will not be able to sponsor your longer term employment visa, right? So if you really want to try to stay in the country where you get your MBA, you might want to target Amazon or I don't know, Goldman Sachs or whatever those big companies are. Even if you're dying for small company experience, keep your eyes on the longer term prize and realize that smaller companies might not be able to keep you in the country as easily as a larger company might. So moving on to another way that people, I think, waste time in the MBA program is that a lot of us have hard time saying no. Right, because we're all overachievers. If we weren't overachievers, we wouldn't be getting into business school. But I will say, learning how to say no in business school, you have to learn how to do it or you're going to burn out and go insane. Look, you're already in school. That hurdle is crossed. Like, you can relax a little, right? You don't have to join every single club. You don't have to help every single person. Yes, help a few people. If you're an accountant and there's an accounting final, yes, help some people, but don't feel like, oh, I need to have, 15 sessions per week. Help. No, it's good enough, right? You don't have to attend every company's info session. If you know you don't want to work somewhere, like you really, really don't want to work there, don't, just because all of your friends are going to the whatever JP Morgan, Goldman, whatever info session, you don't have to go if you're not actually interested in that. Unless sometimes they give out really good food at some of these. And if that's the case, then totally go. Just eat the food, but then leave. And look, if you join an extracurricular project like a club or something, sometimes you get stuck on it turns out not being what you thought it was going to be, right? That maybe the team isn't great, or it stops being interesting for you. It's okay to just say, you know what, guys, this isn't, assuming that you're not leaving people totally hanging, like let's say it's a business plan competition, it's the day before the business plan competition. That would not be cool. But in general, like, it's okay to say, like, look, guys, I'm going to sit this one out. You guys go ahead. I'm going to stay behind and rest, or, catch up on some TV or something like that. Because if you do too many things half-baked, you're going to burn out. You're not going to do them well, first of all. And also emotionally, you're going to burn out. And business school should really be the time of your life. Because why should it be the time of your life? Well, again, not to be overly dramatic, but for many of us, business school is kind of like the last gasp of freedom that we're going to get in our lives, at least until we retire. I'm not trying to bum you out, but the fact is that once you graduate from business school, you're not going to be in control of your schedule anymore, right? Probably for a long time. So if you go, let's say you go into something like banking or consulting, like, you're going to be working 80 hours a week or 100, whatever those hours are. You're not going to have the luxury of saying, like, oh, you know what, guys, it's Saturday. I kind of want to take it easy today. Like, no, you're not allowed to do that when you work in those fields. And since most people graduate with pretty significant student loans, you don't have the luxury of getting fired because you need to pay back the student loans, or you need to work really hard to move up the ladder. If you go into a corporation, or if you become an entrepreneur, you're going to need to work 24/7 to get funding for your startup. Whatever your path is after business school, very few people after business school are like, oh man, now's the time to relax. No, the business school is the time to relax. Afterwards, like I said, like, I don't want to bum you out, but you're going to be working really hard, and then you're going to get a mortgage. And then if you choose to have children, you're going to have to get them braces because their teeth are going to be all crooked. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to need to work a lot for a long time. So what I would say is get to business school, focus on getting that job first. That should be the number one priority, because that's, it's the professional thing. That's why we go to business schools, for professional reasons. But after that's kind of out of the way, this is the time in your life to, for example, if you want to learn a valuable skill for your future career, for example, if you currently work in marketing and you want to eventually become a product manager in the tech industry, learning a programming language, even if you're not the one doing the coding, knowing how programming works and understanding the basic logic of it is so valuable. I'll tell you, I took 2 computer science classes in college. I did not do well in either one of them because the detail orientation needed for, like, the semicolons and the whatever is so bad. Like, my brain is not that way, does not wired that way. But what did it teach me? Those classes at least taught me the basic logic and the fundamental ways that software is developed, and that, and so now as a tech entrepreneur, when I work with my engineers, I am able to communicate much better with them, not only more clearly, but also I don't take them for granted. Which I think a lot of people with non-tech jobs, if you currently are an engineer and you've ever had someone from, I don't know, sales come to you and say, hey, can you build a brand new app by tomorrow that does AI and Bitcoin or whatever? And, like, how long should that take you? 5 minutes, right? Like, then you know what I'm talking about. So since I understand the basics of programming, I'm able to also respect my coders. So if you want to work in the tech industry, even if you're not going to be in a tech function, now might be a really great time to take an introductory programming coding class or an introductory AI class or something like that. Perhaps also a foreign language, right? If you're interested in working for a multinational organization or building a life in a certain part of the world, this could be a great time to take that foreign language class. But it doesn't all have to be about your job. This is the time of your life. It's probably going to be one of the last times, again, especially not to bum you out, but if you choose to have children, trust me, this is going to be one of the last times in your life that you're going to be able to take cooking lessons or golf lessons or dancing, belly dancing, whatever it is. Now is the time to take those classes because, again, the minute graduation hits, those student loans, I believe you get 6 months until that first student loan payment comes due. And at that point, you are off to the races. So take the cooking class now. You will thank yourself later. Another way that I think people can maximize their time as business school students is to think about balancing, in terms of the classes that you take, short-term focused elective versus long-term focused elective. So look, I get it. You went to business school because you want to land a job. You want to pivot your career or enhance your career in some way. But I would say to you, I think too many people focus on, okay, my first job out of business school, I'm going to need to know AI and data analytics and all kinds of crazy financial modeling or whatever it is. And I think the problem there is that people will take all of their electives later on in the program, electives being the classes that you get to choose that are not mandated for you. They'll take all of those classes focused on what do I need for that short-term job. And I totally agree with that on some level, but I don't want you to take too many electives. I want you to take like the minimum amount of electives that you need to at least land the job. Because here's my experience. Once you get to whatever company it is, they're going to have their own way of doing things. So financial modeling is a perfect example. My first job out of college, I was doing strategy and business development, and I worked for these two ex-bankers from a bank called Lazard Frères. And Lazard has its own, that company has its own quote unquote way to build a financial model. So I learned how to build the Lazard Frères financial model, which is not quite the same as the JP Morgan financial model, not quite the same way that, say, a Goldman Sachs, how they build their every company has its own little idiosyncrasies in terms of how do we do even basic things that are common across all of our jobs, like building financial models. There are idiosyncrasies, and they're probably going to train you if it is something like banking or consulting. So you're going to learn a ton on the job anyway. And so I would really ask you to spend your time wisely in terms of choosing electives that are going to be more useful in the long term. In particular, people skills. Anything involving people, managing others, managing people through crisis, negotiating. I think negotiations is probably one of the most valuable classes anyone could take, because those, no matter where you go in your career, you will probably have to deal with people. I'm sorry if that also bums you out, but you're probably going to have to deal with people. You're going to have to negotiate. You're going to have to, pick people up when they're feeling low or whatever it is. So wherever you go in life, those people skills are fundamental, and they're going to be useful no matter where you are. Or another way to think about it is pick classes, if you can sit in on a class, or if you've seen a professor give a talk or a speech or something, and you just love that professor, even if what they're teaching might not be super interesting, a good professor can make even a terrible, boring subject really, really fascinating. So ask around, ask the people the year, or either the year ahead of you or who are ahead of you in some way, hey, did you take this class with this teacher? What did you think? Did you think it was worth it? Because those, even if it's not a topic that you care about a ton, it's a good professor is going to make it great. So you will not regret that. And I'll give you an example. Well, yeah, I took a class on marketing research because I thought I wanted to go into marketing, and I don't think he teaches there anymore, so I think I can say this. The guy was very sweet, very nice, but one of the worst, terrible professor, so boring. So, you know what I mean? Just so not engaging at all. And so I was like, oh my God, what a waste of time. I could have taken some other class with someone else, even if it wasn't quite so relevant to what I think I want to do. So I will say, though, also, just because a professor is famous does not automatically mean they're good. So ask people. There was a rock star professor at my business school who was TED Talks were not really a thing back then, but it, would have been the TED Talk guy, gave a bunch of speeches, super famous. And I signed up for his class, and my then boyfriend, now husband, who was a year ahead of me, had taken that class. And he's like, don't do it. It's a waste of your time. Don't do it. And I was like, but he's so engaging. Nope. It was the worst class I took in business school, was this rock star professor, because he was so famous. He was famous, but he wasn't necessarily a great teacher. So ask people that you respect. I will say that then a few years later, I knew a young woman who went to the school, and she's like, but his class sounds so interesting and I love him. And I'm like, it's a terrible, you're going to hate it. And sure enough, she was like, yeah. 3 months later, she was like, this class is terrible. I should have listened to you. And I'm like, I know. So anyway, a great professor is going to be worth it no matter what they're teaching. Okay. So the other big mistake, if we think back to my agenda at the beginning, is that people do not spend enough time maximizing their relationships. And the relationships are the biggest thing you're going to take away with you after business school, much more so than the actual knowledge that you get in class. In part because, like I said before, a bunch of companies teach their own way of doing things. And also because in part, you might change jobs completely. 6 months, 12 months, 24 months after business school, right? Where your career is going to take you is anyone's guess, but the friendships that you develop in business school are going to be with you no matter where you end up going. So I would say, first of all, grades don't matter, I think, for most recruiters. That is your business school grades. So, don't worry. I don't know that it, I'm trying to think of like people I knew who were on the honor roll or who were Baker Scholars, which is like the top 5% of the class. I don't necessarily know that their lives have taken a dramatically different turn because they were on the honor roll. I do think there are some recruiters, I think maybe some hedge funds that do sort of ask or are like, hey, what are your grades? Like, what did you get in these classes? So I'm not saying that no one cares about your grades, but a lot of recruiters don't care what your grades are in your business school classes. So one of the biggest mistakes I made in business school, I wasted way too much time studying. I took my studies way too seriously. I took the school part of business school way too seriously. Because at the end of the day, that network or those friends that those acquaintances that you meet and those friendships that you develop, that's worth so much more than anything you will ever learn in class. So I don't want you to like completely say no to studying, but all else being equal, if you've got an extra hour on your hands and you're like, I could spend an extra hour reviewing this accounting problem set, or I could go to a bar with some people from my class, I want you to put the book away and I want you to say yes to the social activity. Because 20 years from now, you're not going to remember what you learned in class anyway. Okay. So how do I start to meet other students? I know that up here I had this like, it's not just alcohol. Alcohol is a big part of it, but it's not just alcohol. You should definitely join professional clubs related to your area or areas you're interested in. Fun clubs can also be great, right? There's an outdoorsy club where they go hiking or whatever together, or yoga clubs or things like that. Those can be a really great way to meet people. Even just, if there's a guest speaker on campus and, you go to attend their talk, if you're sitting next to someone new, just like, turn to them and be like, hey, I'm Maria, but don't say that if your name's not Maria, but say, hey, I'm Maria. Like, what's your name? And, oh, where are you from? And blah, blah, blah. Just try to strike up those conversations because you never know, who you'll be sitting next to. And it's even better if developing networks and relationships with people at your own school is great. How much better is it to also develop relationships with people from other schools, right? So there are increasingly a number of inter-school activities like hackathons or case competitions, and especially conferences. The conferences that student groups put on, I think, are, one of the best things anyone can get involved in. Go to the conferences, especially like I believe, for example, for the entertainment industry, there are like 3 different business schools together that band together, or have in the past at least band together, to put on this huge entertainment conference. That would be ideal, because that way you're not only getting to maybe meet some of the VIPs who are invited to speak at the conference. You're not just meeting the other people at your school who are interested in your field, but you're also meeting people from other schools who are also interested in that field. Wow. All right. Like, talk about powerfully multiplying the people you know. And if you can organize a conference, I think that is one of the best uses of time, because again, you're going to meet other people who are just as committed to your future career as you. We my husband and I, we graduated now 15, 16 years ago, and I used to work in the entertainment industry, and he still does. And in fact, we met through the Entertainment and Media Club. So the club thing, I'm really serious about it. But like even 15, 16 years later, the friends that we made through the Entertainment and Media Club, he still is in media, super valuable. not just professionally valuable, but also really good friends. So hopefully I've sold you on getting involved with conferences. And sometimes as a conference organizer, you get to meet the VIPs who are invited to conferences, and that never hurts if somebody famous is speaking at the conference. Also, finally, it doesn't have to just be business school. If you go to an MBA program that is part of a broader university that has a really good engineering program or a really good public policy program or an education school, a graduate school of education, whatever that other passion is for you, go to their events, right? If public policy and, let's say, development finance is something that fascinates you, get on the mailing list for the public policy school. Go to those events, go to those speakers, do the same thing, introduce yourself, try to, hang out and mingle. Because that can also be a great way to meet people who are going to be pretty exciting and interesting for you. And maybe even, for example, if you want to start a company one day, maybe your technical co-founder is currently getting her master's degree in engineering across campus. But you're not going to know you're not going to meet these people if you don't go and put yourself out there and mingle. And it's not just about students. In fact, faculty, this is one thing I didn't do, and boy, was I stupid. Every professor has office hours, or in this, currently they're virtual, but the idea is that it's like, hey, Tuesdays from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., I've got office hours, which is basically open time that they set aside. So if you've got a question on the material, you go to office hours. So I thought, well, I don't really have a question on this material, so I'm just not going to go to office hours. And that was stupid of me. But I should have at least gone and said hi and, hey, I'm Maria. This is who I am. This is what I find interesting in your class, blah, blah, blah. And why is that? I did not, first of all, it's just a friendly thing to do, but I did not realize at all just how many contacts professors have. Professors are often hired by large corporations to consult to them, either in their free time or during the summer months. Or let's say a professor is writing a case study on a particular company. In the process of writing that case study, they get to know the management really well. They also get to know VIPs in the business world, because the VIPs will be taking the executive education program, and the professors get to know the VIPs through that. So the professors themselves, even though they do not work in the business world, they often have very good business relationships. One of the more famous ones I can think about is there's an operations professor at HBS named Fran Fry, and she, a year or two ago, she was on the board of Uber for, I don't remember how long, right? But I'm pretty sure it was Uber. I hope it was Uber. But I think it was Uber. She was some major billion unicorn company, right? And so, if I would have gotten to know, I'm not interested in working there, but wow, I probably should have gotten to know Frances Fry back when I was at HBS, because she was on the board of this really cool company. It was too late once I realized this near the end of my second year, and I feel like an idiot. I have a really good friend who got this crazy awesome job interview because she was taking a class called the history of capitalism, right? And you're like, history of capitalism. That's a perfect example of a rock star, an amazing professor teaching a really boring sounding class, but you take the class anyway because the professor is awesome. There's a woman named Nancy Kane, I think. So if you hear about someone saying oh, Nancy Kane, her lectures are amazing, take that class, even if you're history of capitalism, bleh. Anyway, my friend was in this class, went to her office hours, and was like, oh, I'm so stressed. I'm graduating. I really want to do X and Y, but there's no one recruiting. And it just so happened that this professor had given some sort of talk that one of those companies had hired her to come and give a talk to their employees. So she helped her get an interview at that company. And by the way, being a student is the perfect example. This label of being a student is a perfect, I said example, I misspoke. I meant to say excuse. It's a perfect excuse to reach out to people that you probably can't really reach out to comfortably now, and you won't be able to reach out comfortably to them after you graduate. So let's imagine that you are really interested in learning about the music industry. And let's say right now, you work as a strategy manager at a film studio, and you decide to reach out to some VIP in the music industry just on your own, there's a really good chance that the other person is going to be like, what is this? Is this person trying to get hired? Is that what it is? Ugh, delete, right? Get out of here. But if you say, hey, I'm currently an MBA student working on a project about the music industry, could I get 15 minutes of your time for my research paper? Now you're more likely to get someone to answer you, because it's not about like, oh no, what does this person want from me? Is it a job? Because I don't have any jobs. No, now it's about like, oh, it's a research paper. It's a 15-minute call. Sounds good. And I'll give you an extreme example. So I've been talking about rock star professors, but actual rock stars like Sting. My husband was briefly interested in the music industry when he was in business school. He actually was a strategy manager for a film studio. And he was sort of like, oh, maybe music. And so he was part of a project team that got to do a project for Sting, the actual rock star, to talk about like how he could explore his brand in the 21st century, blah, blah, blah. And so obviously imagine if my husband would have just called up Sting's business manager and been like, hey, can you talk to me about the music business? It wouldn't have gone anywhere. But the fact that it was part of like, hi, I'm part of a team of MBA students and we would like to do a project on Sting's brand. Now it's like, oh, cool, I might get something out of this, right? So yeah, I'll talk to you. So take advantage of that now that you're a student, because you're not going to get that chance later. I've got two kind of quick notes on relationships. These are interpersonal, like romantic relationships. If you're attending a school that has like some sort of a cluster or cohort system where you and all the same students are together for one entire semester or even the entire first year, just be careful if you're single, getting romantically involved with someone in your cluster in the middle of being in that cluster, right? So wait until the semester is over or wait until you've really gotten to know them so that you know that it's not a frivolous thing. Because otherwise, let's say it's the first week of school and you're like, woohoo, I've fallen in love with someone in my cohort. And then things don't go well. You are trapped in a room, in a class, multiple classes a day with that same person sitting across the room from you. And that can get really stressful and unpleasant. So I know someone who unfortunately was in this situation, and at HBS, the section is a year long. So it was like a first week of school thing, and it was okay for a few weeks, and then it wasn't. And it was a long year for sitting in the same classroom. So just think a little bit about what those things might be. And in case you're wondering, like, no, this is not a mistake I made. I did meet my husband in business school, but we were not in the same class. So thank you very much. We met like the second week of school, and that was pretty much it. Okay. So if you're not single, if you are married or in a serious relationship, get your partner involved with the Partners Club. If they are with you physically on the campus, bring them not just to the Partners Club events, but to the social events as appropriate. If for whatever reason they can't come to the social event, say there's like a 3 p.m. Friday happy hour and your partner's like, I'm working at 3 p.m. on a Friday along with the rest of the universe, I can't make it, then see if you can try to connect them with someone from your section or from that you meet who might be useful. So if your partner works in the hospitality industry and you meet someone at an event in your business school who used to work for the Four Seasons, say something like, hey, my husband works in hospitality, can I connect you to, just so then that way your partner feels like they're getting some of the benefit from you going to business school as well. And it also will help make them feel like they're somehow part of your new life and your new friends, because business schools all have their own, like language, like the EC versus the RC year. And, there's lingo, and they're going to start to feel left out if you don't include them. And if you're in a long distance relationship, make it a point to keep those scheduled calls. It's really easy in business school because there is so much going on. There's like 1,000 hours a day worth of stuff to do and only 24 hours in which to do them. So if it's really easy to say like, oh, well, man, tonight, I just can't tonight. I know we were going to talk tonight at 8. I can't. I'm too bit. No, try not to, because then it starts to avalanche, and then you let it slide once, and then it slides again, and then it starts. It's not great. So if you want to continue being in a long distance relationship, try not to make excuses. Do prioritize that. Finally, another potentially irrelevant word of caution. One of my dear friends from business school who's from China got pregnant. Like, she started trying to get pregnant pretty much the day she arrived on campus, because she said that for her, the MBA also stands for Making Baby in America. So again, just something random to keep in the back of your head. If you are studying in a country that gives birthright citizenship, and you're married and you're thinking about having kids at some point, now might be a good time to do that so that they're born in that country and they have citizenship. And also, per my earlier point about how this is like the last time in your life, in your adult life, probably, that you're going to have some time off, like, this isn't a bad time to have a baby in terms of, it's, I have a baby and I didn't finish that problem set, or I didn't finish that that paper that I wrote was really lousy. Who cares? Right? So think about, timing things if you are interested in your MBA standing for Making Baby in America. And then my final tip on how to maximize your time in business school, don't be a cheapskate. So yes, the MBA degree is expensive. One of the modules I have in Applicant Lab, actually at the very beginning, is think about paying for it, because every year I work with people through Applicant Lab who then contact me and they're like, hey, I got into whatever, Yale Business School, whatever, but oh boy, I didn't get a scholarship, and now I have to take out, $150,000 worth of loans, and oh no, I'm so freaked out by it. And I'm like, oh my God, you should have thought about this like 2 years ago, because it was inevitable that you were going to have to take out loans. So here's a headline that I found from about a year and a half ago. Almost half of the MBA students at the top 5 programs borrow at least $100,000 to finance their degree. So yeah, not everyone has to pay $100,000, but a lot of people do. And so just realize that you might have to take out heavy amounts of loans. And so that might lead you to think, okay, since business school is so expensive, I need to save, once I get there, I need to save every penny. I need to, I'm going to eat ramen noodles, right? Those instant noodles. I'm not even going to buy the nice toilet paper. I'm going to save every penny I can, because I am accruing so much debt that, forget it. People are going out to dinner. I'm not going to join them because I'm saving money. People are going to a bar. That's an expensive bar. I'm not going because I'm saving money. No. One way to look at it is that you could say, okay, so I have to take out $100,000, $180,000 or more in loans. So given that, I better not spend any more than I possibly have to. Another way to look at it is, well, I'm taking out $150,000 of loans anyway. What's another 10 grand on top of that? Right? Because you get 20-ish years to pay back your student loans. And so I would rather you spend the money now maximizing your experience than, having $10,000 less in debt, that over the long term, over 20 years, that extra $10,000 is not that big of a deal. So my husband's greatest regret, for example, was not going on India Trek. And I also regret not going on more treks. So the treks, every school has different names for them, but the treks are things like a group of students get together and they're from Israel and they say, hey, we're all going to, we're from Israel. We want to lead a group of students. Come with us. Come travel to Israel for 2 weeks. And we'll just, we'll do some businessy stuff, but we'll also hang out. I only went on one. I organized a trip to Brazil, but it wasn't really a trek. That was pure vacation. And then I went on a trek to Africa. I should have gone on every trek. I should have spent the money, because the treks are an amazing way to travel, because you're traveling with students who are from that country. Usually they themselves are VIPs or the children of VIPs. And so it's not your typical beach vacation. Like, you're like, oh, we're having dinner with the ambassador tonight. That's cool. And it's also another great way to get to meet people, right? You're traveling together. Sometimes if you're doubling up to share a room, you might have a roommate. And so I met the one trek I went on, I met some really great people. And unfortunately, I took that trek at the very end of my second year. And I was like, oh man, shoot. I wish I would have I only realized how valuable the trek is, not just fun, but also valuable when it was too late to go on any more of them. So like my husband's year, for example, the India trek, his year, I think one of the students leading it, like their father was like, and I'm going to get this wrong because I don't understand the nuances of Indian government, but was like the governor of Rajasthan, maybe. I don't remember. So one of the other students was like, oh yeah, my uncle is, well, I don't know, one of the top people at Tata Group, or was it Tata? I think it was Reliance, actually. Anyway, like, oh my God. He's like, I totally should have gone on India Trek because these kids know so many people that it would have been so much better than just going on vacation there 10 years later. So this is just one example. I think the traveling, the trips, on a much smaller scale, a lot of the schools will have things like ski trips. They'll have trips to Vegas. My take is go on all of them, and you'll pay back the money later. All right, so those are all of my, how do I do this? Now I can't remember how to, I do not want to share my screen anymore. Sorry guys, I'm having some, screen sharing was canceled. Okay, good. It's been a little while and I was like, wait, there's something I have to click to take the thing off. All right, so I told you, Abhijit, I would try to get it done in less than an hour. So I now have 14 minutes to try to answer any questions. So let's see. Let's go through. I'm scrolling. Yeah, it has been a long time. That's why I couldn't remember which button to press. Okay, someone's asking, is 33 too late for a 2-year MBA, both from an employment and experience point of view? It depends. A lot of it depends more on how many years of experience you have and not your actual chronological age. So if you spent 7 years getting a PhD, and so now you're 33, but you only have, 5 years of work experience, that's very different than if you've been working for 12 years out of college. So if you are sort of 12 years out of college, I would think very carefully about, the typical 2-year MBA. First of all, a lot of typical 2-year MBA programs may not accept you because they're trying to save you from yourself from making a bad decision. If the idea is I'm 33, I'm going to go to business school, so I'll be 35 or 36 when I graduate, and I'm going to go work at McKinsey, it might not work out because those big employers, the ones that ask you to work 80 hours a week, it's a lot easier to work 80 hours a week when you're 27 versus almost 37. And when you get older, you'll know what I mean. So, and also remember I talked about a few minutes ago about like how much alcohol plays a role in the social stuff. Like when you're 26, it's one thing to go out to the bars 3 times a week until 2 a.m. When you're 35, it's a much different, your liver, not only is your liver not in as good shape, but also, you're not interested in that stuff anymore. You're like, oh, these are kids. So also ask yourself, like, am I going to learn anything from these people? Like if right now you are managing 26-year-olds, what is it going to be like for you to be in a class where those people are your peers? I would be frustrated personally. So think about it. Don't just sort of blindly go into it. I work with Amazon in operations. Can you join consulting firms like Bain? So like I said earlier, pretty much the management consulting firms don't care as much about your background. Now, since you're in operations, you are more likely to get called back for operations consulting. You're probably more likely to get called back for an operations consulting role versus a strategy consulting role. However, that having been said, as long as you knock it out of the park on the personal interview and on the case interview, it doesn't matter if you were teaching kindergartners how to finger paint before business school. As long as you've got the skills and you pass that rigorous their rigorous hiring process, you can do it. So someone's asking, do MBA programs look for specific industries like finance or consulting? Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at the incoming, well, yes, but also it's a self-selection thing. Like, obviously, if you work in consulting or finance before business school, you're more likely to want to go to business school. So, if you look at the incoming class statistics, every school will publish a class profile. Usually something like 30% of the class is from consulting and 30% is from finance. Don't quote me on those numbers. I'm just pulling them out of the air, but it's a pretty big percentage. Now that means if that's 60%, that means 40% isn't from finance or consulting. So lots of people from lots of different backgrounds get in. I think the most important thing to think about is, what are your leadership abilities when have you been able to drive positive change in an organization? And that matters more to business schools than your actual where you worked. Ooh, Kinshuk Nigam, you are asking a question that I love. In terms of your career in the long run, does it matter if you go to M7 versus a top 20 school? Not really. Like someone mentioned Bain a second ago. Bain recruits at the M7, the top 10. They might even recruit at some of the, some of the non-target schools. I've heard of people being able to get jobs because they somehow find a way to network with a recruiter and they throw their hat in the ring and it works out for them. So at the end of the day, what matters more is who you are, how smart you are, and how good your leadership skills are. My husband right now works with people at his level who went to USC. And USC is a great program, especially for entertainment. So no surprise there. But or for people who didn't even get MBAs, right? So and ask yourself, when you look at the senior people in your company, how many of does it matter if they went to, I don't know, USC versus Harvard? Not really. What matters is once you get that job, that you kick butt in it. You work really hard, you kick butt, you build those relationships, you build that credibility. 10 years later, no one's going to care. Someone's asking a question about IIMs. I'm sorry, I'm not really familiar with, I don't know as much about is IIM a good program for India? I know it's famous, I know it's good, but I don't know much about career placements in India. There's a question about, is entrepreneurship good for an MBA? Yes and no. I wouldn't have considered entrepreneurship if it weren't for my MBA. So in that case, there's that to be said for it. And also the network that I built from my MBA has been really valuable when I've needed advice certain parts along the way. What are the patterns? Kinshuk with another great question. What are the patterns that you've seen for people who have successful careers or not? Again, that interpersonal leadership. People who are able to, if you are the smartest person in the room and you can put together a spreadsheet like nobody's business and you can do this data analysis, AI, machine learning thing, but nobody likes you, you're not moving ahead. You might move ahead in your own little niche, but you're not going to move up. And that's another, I feel like I'm like, gosh, I can't remember the name of that video, but I've covered that in another video. That the people skills and the leadership skills and the persuasion skills, that's what matters. So how do you find out about rockstar professors? Yes, from alumni, from other students, the students the year ahead. You normally don't get to take electives until second semester or second year. So that will give you some time to, ask around. Oh, hi, Amy. You loved using Applicant Lab and you got multiple M7 school interviews this year. Yay, keep me posted. Email me and let me know what happened. How to surround yourself with positive people. Yeah, surround yourself with people who are also interested in the same career path as you, because if all of you graduate and you all go out into a specific field, like say entertainment, those people are going to go up and you're going to move up. And so your network just gets that much stronger. So positive people in general are always good. Most business schools let in people who are positive though. That's kind of one of the screening things they try to screen for. So it would be more about if you want to work in real estate, join that real estate club, because the other people there are also going to go into real estate and it'll just be helpful for you later on. How long did it take you to pay off the loans? I think about 12 years. But I I was too much of a cheapskate during school, which I regret. I've also a cheapskate in real life, which I don't regret. So I've always lived way below my means, and I drive a car that is embarrassing, and I put every bonuses that I got, all of it went to it. So that was just me. That was probably also not smart because depending on the interest rate, that you get on your loans, it may or may not make sense for you to be like, hey, I could make more money if I put this money in the stock market. So I should probably do that too. But I just have a mental thing about debt. How much to study? Should you have studied more, network more? But I'm sorry, Jaideep, you might have missed the beginning. I absolutely studied too much. I shouldn't have studied nearly as much. 10K isn't enough to go all in on treks. Yeah, I don't know. I went years ago, right? So it was I think $5 or $6 grand each one. Oh, another Apple Lab user. Yes. Thank you, Sanjana. It's nice to hear from you. I never hear people just sort of sign up. And you'd be surprised how few people actually reach out to me. So I'm like, do you like it? Do you not like it? If it's not great, tell me what's not great. I can make it better. But if you do like it, let me know. What's the best time in the MBA process to start using Applicant Lab? You're studying for the GMAT now. There's definitely advice in it for how to prepare for your stuff. But if your applications, by stuff, I mean applications. But if you're going to be totally all in focus right now on GMAT and you're not going to pay attention to Applicant Lab anyway, then maybe wait until after the GMAT. People with 10 years of experience. Yeah, Ravish, if you've got more than 10 years of experience, it's probably an executive MBA or a part-time MBA is going to be your best option, not only because you're more likely to get in, but because you are going to be surrounded by other people who are at that same stage of life, of maturity, and of seniority as you. Again, you're not going to be sitting in class with people that you consider to be kids, sort of rolling your eyes at them. You're going to be with people that you really respect. Do I know if architects do an MBA? Sure. It's not common, but why not, right? If you want to start a real estate, firm. How to prep for financing an MBA, banks and sponsors. Yeah, that part is not my expertise. I'm more of the helping people write essays part. So I'm not so sure, but yeah, start looking at potential sponsors or start looking at programs that might not be as expensive. Programs in Europe, for example, are usually much less expensive than the programs in the US. So try to think about that. Let me see, how am I doing for time? I have a hard stop in 3 minutes. Oh, no, wait, sorry. Oh, wait, I just got an email that my thing at 10 is actually starting at 10:15. I don't have a hard stop in 3 minutes. I have a hard stop in 18 minutes. Great. Where was I? I'm scrolling through these the comments that have been coming in. I'm scrolling through them trying to find where was I? I saw someone. Okay. What roles to go after with MBA for business analytics? Is it even worth it? So that's a great question. Again, this is not 100%. I'm focused on the beginning part of the process of helping. You have this experience over here. How do we describe that experience in the best way possible so it's most likely to resonate with admissions officers? That's my sweet spot of what I know, my proverbial wheelhouse. For data analytics MBAs, I think if you do I kind of don't want to say anything because I don't entirely know. But I think the data analytics MBAs tend to be STEM certified in the US, but a lot of MBA programs in general are becoming STEM certified. STEM means that you will be able to stay in the US for at least 3 years instead of only having 1 year. I do not know what that OPT work visa situation is if someone just gets a master's in data analytics. I will say if you want to do data analytics, I think that an MBA might be overkill. If analytics is what I love, I wake up in the morning, I love it, then maybe look at a master's in data analytics. But if conversely, you're I love data analytics, but I also want to learn the other parts of how a business works, then maybe the MBA might be worth it. It's kind of hard to, if you want to do a pure analytics job, the MBA might be overkill. Does the Amazon brand play a vital role in getting into an MBA program? So Shaz, it doesn't hurt. It helps. It's great. But Amazon is also, how many employees are at Amazon? I don't know, tens of thousands. there are a lot of applicants from Amazon. So simply working at Amazon does not really get you anything. But if you're at Amazon and you are kicking butt there and doing really well in your career, then that certainly helps. But simply being working at a fancy company, especially the big ones, doesn't mean anything because, I don't know, there's probably, 500 people a year from Amazon applying to MBA programs? What school should you aim for full scholarships? So you're more likely to get a scholarship at the lower ranked schools, especially if you have a very high GMAT. Because a lot of the schools that are lower in the rankings, and I put that in quotes because the rankings are stupid, and I think they make people. I think I did a GMAT club thing on why the rankings are stupid. You could probably, if you search like why rankings are stupid, you'll probably find it. But since the rankings matter, even though they shouldn't, the schools that are lower ranked are trying to play that game. And one of the ways you play that game is you get your class's average GMAT score up. How do you do that? You let in people with really high GMATs to balance out the people with the lower GMATs. So if you are looking for a scholarship, try to get a really high GMAT and then apply to schools where your GMAT is way above the average. So then that way you will be helping them by helping pull their average GMAT up. Any suggestions on finding out what you want to do from a career perspective? I do have one. So a lot of business schools actually use this tool. It's called careerleader.com. I think it's like $100 to use it. And I reach out to them all the time. I'm like, please let me be like, can I get a referral fee? Because I refer this so much. And they're like, no. But Career Leader is like a test. It's like a personality test, basically. And it comes back and it tells, oh, thank you. Yes, our MBA rankings, bleep, bleep, bleep. That's it. So yes. Anyway, thank you. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So Career Leader is like a personality test, and it comes back and it's like, hey, we think your personality is X and Y. Therefore, we think you'd be happiest in jobs that are like this. And it's funny because I recommend Career Leader so strongly, in part because for me, it was so accurate. It's actually really scary because it told my Career Leader results told me things I did not want to hear. I wanted my Career Leader results to say, you should go work in, something super high paying and you're going to be, no, my Career Leader results were like, you should probably work in social enterprise or be an entrepreneur in social enterprise. And I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that. I'm not coming here to become a social, I was like, I'm coming to business school to make money. But you know what? It was right. As much as I fought my Career Leader results, it was like it was, what did it say? It said it gave me 3 things that drive me. 1 is creativity. 2 is mentoring others, which, I mean, I've just spent an hour hopefully showing you that's, I'm like, yeah, I really, really like to mentor others. Darn it. I wish it would have said, like, you're really good at being a cutthroat capitalist. It didn't. It was like, you're really good at mentoring. And then the third one was influence through language and ideas, which is basically like, you like to write. So I'm like, great. My Career Leader came back and told me I shouldn't be in business school at all because the things I like are creativity, helping people, and writing. So, poof. But hey, look, I ended up finding a way to turn it into a business. Wow. Crazy, right? So I don't know. My Career Leader destiny, I was miffed when I first got it. I was like, boo, Career Leader. But oh my God, I cannot deny the power of its accuracy. GMAT versus CAT. Which one is a tougher? I don't know which one is a tougher exam. I've never taken the CAT, but if you're applying to US business schools, you need the GMAT because I don't think they take the CAT. Oh, I used Applicant Lab and I got some great results. Thank you. I want to be a social entrepreneur. Is it better to choose a socially driven business program or a business-oriented public admin program? Julian, this is a great question. I think it will depend. If you could email me support@applicantlab.com and give me like a few days to get back to you, because with homeschooling, because of COVID, I don't have a lot of time anymore to work. But email me and I will try to get back to you with like some information on the different. I mean, here's the thing. I think all else being equal, I think the socially driven business program is the better fit than the business-oriented public administration program. That having been said, if the business-oriented public administration program is less expensive, or if it's shorter, like if it's a 1-year program versus a 2-year program, maybe that could be a good thing in terms of you getting back out into the world quicker. It'll depend upon exactly what your goals are. and some other things. So this was sort of too personal for me to handle here, but all else being equal, I would choose the core business degree versus the public administration degree. Thanks for suggestion on talking to students on clubs. How do you get them to respond? Okay, so to be clear, for talking to MBA students for the clubs, you can do that now as an applicant. For talking to the professors, you can't do that now as an applicant. That would be very gauche. I personally think that's kind of cringy. Like, you're not even coming to my school yet and you're reaching out to me. I think you can reach out to professors once you're enrolled in a school, and especially if you take their class. But even if you're not enrolled in their class, right? If there's a professor that's teaching something that is very niche, that is very specialized to you, totally reach out to them. Getting them to respond to you on LinkedIn is a different people view LinkedIn differently. So some people actually view LinkedIn as like, I will not link in with people that I do not personally know. Other people, like me, I just link in with pretty much anyone because I publish news and information that might be useful to applicants, right? So it depends on, for some people, LinkedIn's probably a little too personal, but the clubs themselves will have like contact us information on their websites. So I would try it through that. The best strategy. Does somebody have a document on the best strategy for debt? Should I use all my savings and minimize it? So that's first of all, Sudoku, that's a great question in terms of, does anyone have a guide or a website? I should probably reach out to some of the loan companies and see what they think. Obviously, the loan companies will be more likely to promote loans. My gut is that I would rather take out loans than use up all of my savings. Because first of all, if you have your savings, it's a good cushion. It's a good safety net. Should you need some money quickly for whatever reason, emergency reason. And also debt, the student debt interest rate can often be more appealing than, it can be high, but it's not necessarily like crazy high, right? So in terms of the opportunity cost, I would lean towards taking out debt versus using savings. Hazar, bonjour, Maria. Just passing by to say, oh, Applicant Lab is amazing. Yes, Hajar, thank you. Hajar is wonderful. You were an Applicant Lab user. I don't know if you want me to say publicly where you got in, but it was a really great school. It's the same school I went to. Okay, these are piling up, and now my 15 minutes are quickly disappearing. Average cost for an MBA in Germany, Netherlands. I'm so sorry, Nehal. I don't know necessarily, but I know it's cheaper than the US. I love your jacket, Maria. Thanks, Amanda. You look great today too. I don't know what you look like, but I'm just being friendly. I bought this jacket in Hong Kong many years ago. I lived in Hong Kong for a while, and it was great because you can't necessarily tell, but I'm really petite. And like, it was the only place in the world where I could just buy things off the shelf, and it's like, it fits my shoulders. I'm not swimming in it. This is amazing. So one of these days, I'm going to go back and just shop. Thanks for the session. You're welcome. Our MBA rankings BS. Ooh, Jinkio, you're asking a very specific question about your profile and MNC experience. How hard is it to sell a career change to finance? I just think as long as you do your research and you show in your application that you've done your research, right? If you say, I talked to people in the finance club at your school and they had IT backgrounds like mine, and they were able to switch into banking because they took the following wallstreetoasis.com class, or they did whatever, and here's how they did it. So that's how I'm going to do it. Can you please share your email address? Yes, support@applicantlab.com is the best one, because it's we use like a separate inbox for it, as opposed to there are some other email addresses floating around out there, but they go into an inbox and a lot of them get lost in spam filters and stuff. So please use support. Thank you. support@applicantlab.com. What did I do right after the MBA, my MBA internship? So my MBA internship was in marketing for a television company. I used to work in strategy for a television company, and so I thought I wanted to go into marketing. So I worked in marketing for a television company because even I couldn't make the switch. Like, ideally, I kind of wanted to do like organic product marketing. And none of those companies would call me back because I didn't have any, my experience was in television, and they're like, your experience isn't relevant. So I didn't even get, I got like one interview. But then I realized from my internship that I don't want to do marketing. And so after the MBA, I joined a startup that was doing technology for television companies. Again, it's not that it's impossible to escape your past, but it's a lot easier to go back to something that you have experience in. So a regular tech company might have looked at me and been like, what can you give for us? But this company was making tech products for TV companies. And so they were like, hey, you're pretty niche. You fit our niche. Okay. To start doing a profile in Applicant Lab, I would start as soon as possible. But if you're studying focused right now on the GMAT, maybe wait until afterwards. Do I recommend doing the MBA with work experience or without work experience? Definitely with work experience. First of all, you might not get in without work experience. And any program that lets you in without work experience is probably not worth going to. Because remember, just getting the MBA is not this magical, it's not magic. I have a saying that I say frequently, which is, it's Harvard, not Hogwarts. You are not going to become a wizard if you go to a top MBA program. You cannot magically change your life. This morning on LinkedIn, I saw some article about how hard it is, how some kids in India spend like 3 years studying for the IIT entrance exam. And then someone was like, some people are like, wow, that's ridiculous. Just, do something else with your life. But then one person was like, wow, but if you go to an IIT, what did they said something like, you'll never have problems again or something like that. I was like, so the MBA without work experience, you're probably not going to get a typical post MBA job, right? So even if an MBA program lets you in without work experience, the recruiters are not going to say, oh, this person has no work experience, let's bring them in at the associate level at $150K a year. No, they're going to be like, this person has no work experience. They somehow got into an MBA program. That's weird. But let's put them in at the analyst level, which is lower. Some product managers say an MBA is not necessary to become a PM. Does an MBA help in the long run in the tech industry? So this is a great thing for you to start thinking about. Everyone needs to think carefully about whether or not this investment is worth it. I don't think you need an MBA necessarily to get a product manager job. Do you need it to succeed in the long term at a product manager job? Probably a lot of people don't need it. Maybe some people do. I think you need to look really carefully at yourself and what you're good at and what you're not good at and say, okay, what skills, if you're working for, say, a consumer-facing tech company, and so as a product manager, identifying and synthesizing customer feedback is a vital part of that product's success, then say to yourself, okay, I need to understand how consumers think. Is this something I think I can teach myself and learn on the job, or is this something that I would benefit from the MBA? So it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you don't need an MBA really to get any job, theoretically. But the question is, once you get, for me, what made me choose it, because in entertainment, at least at the time in the entertainment industry, the MBA was not common. What made me choose it was I thought, and actually one of the CEO of my company actually came to me and was like, why are you leaving for an MBA? It's stupid. It's a waste of time. You don't need it. He's like, you're on the path. You're on that skyrocket ship to path to becoming a divisional manager really soon. Anyway, like, why would you blow it to go get an MBA? And my response to him was, well, I don't want to get that job and then mess it up. So that was my rationale. I don't know. One never knows. But do you need the MBA to become a product manager? Probably not. Okay. I only have like a minute or two. Oh, wait a second. I don't have a minute or two. I actually have no minutes left. But this time, at least, I was able to answer a bunch of questions. If you were at my last session, I ran out of time and I didn't get to answer any questions. So Abhijit this time was very nicely like, Maria, can you please answer questions? Can you please not talk as much and then instead answer questions? And I did that. So if you do have additional questions, you can email support@applicantlab.com, check out our blog, start your free trial at Applicant Lab and start tinkering around with some of the free stuff I give you. And yeah, I hope the session was helpful and all the best. Bye.